Bonjour les amis, bonjour, bonjour. Welcome to the Loire Valley. Would you please look at the sky? Not a cloud in sight. I've been saying that a lot today, in fact the last couple of days. I'm a little bit excited about the weather, I won't be lying. Welcome for joining us today. I have a nice stroll ready for you, a virtual adventure. It's been a little while. I think this is my first one in 2023, so I'm quite excited to see that some of you are here live, and I hope others will join us later. I'm going to jump off the bench where I'm standing. That's what you do when you're short. But I wanted to start our tour here on the highest point of the city of Saumur, where I am staying this weekend. Welcome, bienvenue, bonjour, salut. I see familiar names. Now I hope our cell signal is going to be decent. If it's not, there's nothing much I can do about it. And if for any reason we lost the cell signal, then I would have to film the tour like I have done before and release it later. So we'll let fingers crossed, okay? So you're looking at the city of Saumur right below our feet. We are in a very safe place. Traditionally, where I'm standing has been the safest place in town. And the river you see down below is the Loire River, the longest river in France, the powerful Loire. Would you look at the reflection of these houses? It's an island that's across from us over here, and the right bank is on the other side of that island. I guess somebody's reminding us it's 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. in France. So the Loire, it's perfect to start here actually, because the Loire has been so essential to the prosperity of Saumur and so many other towns in the Loire Valley. And so it's perfect that we're starting here. You see also a bridge. It looks a lot like the stone bridge we have in Tours. This one is called Pont César, and it was also added in the 18th century. And this here is the steeple of a beautiful church. We will wrap up this tour right by that church. It's Saint-Pierre, St. Peter's Church. What you notice right away are the gray, the slate rooftops, and the white walls. Now Saumur has been nicknamed the Pearl of the Anjou. The pearl because of all the white that you see on all these facades, from that soft limestone called tufa in French, or tufa in English. We've talked about it very often. And the Pearl of the Anjou, because we are not in the Touraine anymore. We are in the Anjou region, and of course the main city here is Angers. I took you there not too long ago. So the Anjou, or at least the city of Saumur, is also part of the Loire Valley, and the Loire meanders. I'm walking towards the chateau. Now, many towns along the Loire River have fortresses and chateaux. This is the Chateau de Saumur. It's been through a lot, as you can imagine, but this is pretty much what it looked like in the 15th century, by the 15th century, except that we are missing an entire wing. The west wing, if you will, is missing. This one was never replaced. You can visit the chateau, and they're very quick to tell you that it is also a museum. So I will talk about that a little later. But look at the sun hitting the tufa stone. It's beautiful, and I do love the towers. They look like pencils. You know the kind of pencils you have in your little kit when you're in elementary school, with their sharp rooftops. If you see old representations of this chateau, like the ones done in the early, in the 14th and 15th century, you would see a lot of flags flying on top of it. This is a really fun chateau to visit because of the art that's inside. A gentleman named Charles Blair, who was from Saumur and made a lot of money collecting art, donated, when he died in 1919, donated his entire collection of objects, lovingly collected throughout his life, objects from many countries in the world, and he donated them to the city of Saumur. They had already established a municipal museum inside the chateau at that time, and with the addition of that incredible collection, they were able to open a museum of fine arts. So when you come here to Saumur, if you make the trek, it's a bit of a trek to come up to the chateau. Let me warn you, there are a lot of stairs or pretty steep inclines. So you need to be a little bit athletic, but there is a parking lot nearby where you can park and get closer. So if you come to the chateau, you will not only see a chateau that's been restored and it's in excellent shape, but you will also visit a museum of fine arts with exquisite pieces from many countries. And I'm talking about faience, earthenware, art, costumes, everything that Mr. Lair collected in his lifetime. I am playing with my gimbal here. That's not doing what it's supposed to do. So pardon me for a few seconds as I try to figure it out. I think we're good now. Sorry about that. It's a little rusty, as I am. It's been a while since we've done a virtual tour. Look at this chateau. So we're starting our tour here because the chateau is where a lot of things happened here back in the day, in the Middle Ages, when you had local lords, powerful local lords fighting each other. You had the Counts of Blois fighting the Counts of Anjou. The Counts of Anjou eventually dominated. This was also the base of the mighty Plantagenet dynasty. You've all heard of Henry II Plantagenet, who married Eleanor of Aquitaine. That man pretty much owned a good section of Western Europe between England and all of France, the western side of France, from Normandy all the way to southwestern France. So the Plantagenet dynasty ruled from this area. And in fact, several members of that family are buried nearby in an abbey, which is known as Fontevraud, and I highly urge you to visit it if you can. So I'm trying to let you enjoy the chateau before I move on. You would enter here. The billetterie ticket office is right here. It's $8.50 to get inside. So quite spectacular, and remember there is an incredible art collection inside. Now around the chateau that was fortified on several occasions, especially during the 100 Years' War, walls were built to protect the city, of course. And at some point in time, the chateau was almost abandoned, and it was that was after the French Revolution, and it was saved by Napoleon I that turned it into a state prison. So on both sides here, you would have had very high walls and barracks. In fact, those buildings are still named after those barracks. It became a museum, like I said, in 1912. And it's a national monument of France, of course. Quite spectacular, probably one of the most beautiful chateaux in the Loire. There is a lot of history, you're right, and I'm only giving you bullet points here. You'll have to forgive me. We could spend 2 hours talking about the Counts of Blois, the Counts of Anjou, the Dukes of Anjou, the good King René I mentioned when we visited Angers, if you recall. But a long time ago here in the 10th century, there was an abbey right around where I'm staying here. And this abbey had been founded to honor a saint, the saint that evangelized the Anjou. His name was Saint Florent. And so in the 10th century, the chateau was really here to protect this abbey. But like I said, a lot of history. So Anjou's success, economic success, came from the Loire, like many towns and cities around this area and in the Touraine as well. The Loire brought trade, boats bringing construction materials like the tufa stone or the slate, food as well, from the 16th through the 18th century, roughly. The 18th century was really the peak of the trade on the Loire River, but then what had to happen happened. Modern times, steam arrived, and then of course the train roads were developed as well in the 18th century, and then there was a decline, and those towns were not quite so dependent on the river anymore. So I'm going to leave the chateau now. We're going to leave safety, because back in the day we would have been very safe here, behind those high walls. Thank you for joining me today. I see we have a very good turnout. I know it's very early in some parts of the world, or maybe very late in others. The people who are passing me here are pretty out of breath because it's a bit of an incline if you come this way. So my plan today is to take you down below. We're going to go down below where the medieval town was. We will also see what happened to the architecture and the streets of Saumur, which is a small town, about 26,000 people. So quite a small town by today's standards, but a very interesting one for sure. Do you see the mistletoe in those trees? In French, we call it le gui, G-U-I, le gui. Fortunately, it's a parasite. But it's pretty, isn't it? All right, so leaving the safety of the chateau, the Chateau de Saumur. Yeah, I think my gimbal is acting up a little bit, so I apologize if it's not 100% perfect. But c'est la vie. If there's one thing I've learned in the last 2 or 3 years since I started live streaming is that there's no sure thing. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Véro. I am a French native who lived in the United States for a long time. I relocated to France in 2019, and when COVID hit in 2020, I launched an online business known as France with Véro. And through this business, in many different ways, I take you to France, to Paris and the rest of France, every week on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and of course through videos and virtual tours like this one. And all these virtual tours are free, and you can find them, the replays, on my YouTube channel, France with Véro. So just a short introduction for those of you who haven't met me yet. You're right. Well, maybe the tours are more personal, but at the same time, you're dealing with cell signal and tech issues sometimes. There's a very interesting house around right in front of us, and I wanted you to see it, and I'm so glad you're seeing it in the sun because the sun is almost setting. Look at this house. So if you picture the town right below the chateau, by the 14th and 15th century, several rows, there were walls around the city and they were added over time, but a lot of these houses would have looked like this one. But of course, this one, as you can tell, has been heavily restored. This is a house that's been lovingly restored. It's absolutely stunning. And the people who restored this house are known as les Compagnons du Devoir et du Tour de France, the companions. You've heard their name if you followed some documentaries about the progress of the construction or reconstruction at Notre-Dame de Paris. To put it, to summarize it, les Compagnons du Devoir et du Tour de France are roughly the crème de la crème of French craftsmen. This is an organization that has been around since the Middle Ages. It is extremely challenging to become a compagnon. It's a way of life. Not only are you a very talented craftsman, but you also share what you know with others. So you enter, it's almost like entering a religion. And they work in all the different fields that you can possibly think of, carpentry, woodwork carpentry, as well as stone cutting, stained glass making, you name it. And this is why they use them in Notre Dame and other sites. Well, anyway, the town of Saumur bought this house. It was one of the last standing examples of a 15th century so the late Gothic style of the town of homes, the type of homes that were around here, and they bought it and gave it to the Compagnon to restore. And this is today one of their centers. So when you become a Compagnon, or before you become a Compagnon, I'm showing you where I have to go now, so I'm going to be careful. Before you become a Compagnon, you have to work for years. And part of learning your trade involves a Tour de France. So it has nothing to do with biking, but you're going to be traveling around France and training with other Compagnons who are more experienced. And so some cities in France are major centers for these Compagnons. And they're going to learn their trade, stop for a few months, and then they move on to a next stop. So this Saumur is a major stop for them. In fact, this house is where some of the young Compagnons stay. Tours, the city where I live, is also a major stop for them. And there's a museum there that I always recommend in Tours called Le Musée du Compagnonnage. So if you want to learn more about les Compagnons du Tour de France, highly recommend you visit that museum in Tours. I hope the picture quality is good for you. Yes, thank you, Deborah. Yes, do like the video, and comments and likes do help. They tell YouTube that you're enjoying this, and they help share or spread the word about what I do. You know, I like walking here. I've looked at different routes yesterday, but this is my favorite one because on this side I can actually get so close to this steep roof line made of slate. And you know, slate has been called the gray gold. The gray gold or the blue gold, maybe, either gray or blue, because it brought so much prosperity to this region. The quarries, a lot of the quarries in France were in the Anjou region, and you can see the kind of work that it is to create a slate rooftop. You see the little pins they have to hold each piece of slate in place? So this is a really nice way to go because you get to see this. And right below is that tufa stone. You see the color? And that is why they call Saumur the pearl of the Anjou. Now there are different grades of tufa in the quarries. The most coveted one is the white one, the pure one, and the white one is what they use to build the chateaus. And then there are other types that are not quite so white, maybe more of a yellowish tone, and you know, you'd see this on houses, for example. All right, so we are leaving the safety of the chateau. The chateau sits all the way up there. You can kind of see it through that tree here. So picture this big house from the 15th century, magnificent. It's been completely restored by les Compagnons du Tour de France. And a lot of the young Compagnons were out here today. They were chatting, and I think their parents were visiting them today, actually. You need to be 16 years old to join les Compagnons, and it takes years before you become a fully fledged Compagnon du Devoir. It's a big honor. And after that, you remain a Compagnon for the rest of your life, and you agree to share what you know with others and keep training others. Now, one detail that I love, okay, let's look at this first. I like the red, don't you? It's really neat. All right, look at this. When you are a Compagnon du Devoir et du Tour de France, you have a pretty cool mailbox. You can't just have a regular mailbox. I thought you'd enjoy this. All right. So if you're ready, let's go down. Let's leave the top of the hill. No stairs here, so that's okay. I hope everybody's doing okay. Some of you just woke up, so I want to thank you for being here. This is a really good turnout so early on a Saturday for at least our North American friends. Our Australian friends are probably sleeping, and I apologize. I know some of you would like to catch more of these events live, and I'll try and do more in the middle of the day here in France so you can catch those. But at least everybody can get the replay. Look how steep this is. I didn't lie, did I? Look at that. Imagine doing this in the rain. Now, if I fall, you'll catch this live. It should be entertaining, at least to you. All right, I almost made it. So I said Saumur got a lot, its prosperity came from the Loire River, of course. Saumur was also a Protestant stronghold. Many people have heard the story of Saint Bartholomew massacre in Paris in the 16th century, when thousands of Protestants, men, women, children, were killed. But what people don't always realize is that those religious wars actually lasted for decades. And they didn't start in Paris, they started here in the Loire Valley. In fact, the first massacre was in Amboise. And there were massacres, just to be clear, on both sides. Some of them committed by Catholics, others by Protestants. I'm going downstairs now, so I'm being careful. Look. Voila. So, by the end of the 16th century, the religious war slowed down, and the last of the Valois kings, his name was Henry III. He was the last son to rule, the last son of the famous Catherine de' Medici and her husband, Henry II. Henry III gave the city of Saumur to Protestants. And so it became... Oh, un chat. Bonjour Minou. Ça va? Comment va le chat saumurois? No? Okay. Your mom told you not to talk to strangers, I understand. Okay. Well, you're very pretty. Have a good day. Back to the story. Sorry, I like cats and dogs and all pets. So Saumur became a Protestant stronghold. To the extent there was a temple here, there was also a very powerful, very important school, a bit of an academy. And it was created by the local governor who lived in the chateau for a while. So we are now on a street called Grande Rue. Grande Rue. Well, because at the time, up until the 18th century, I'm sure, it was a pretty major street in the town. And the architecture here is quite elegant, isn't it? So you know that you are in a section of town where some, I would say, fairly affluent people lived, and always that tougher stone. I'm going to take a tiny little street here, and if the cell signal gods hear me, I hope they help. This street, which enables me to cross between two streets, is aptly named La Rue Traversière. So I'm going to traverse. You can see how peaceful this is. Today was really lively in the morning. We had the market in town. Great little market. The quality of the produce was actually pretty impressive. Have an old door here. I know you all love those old doors. So we are in a part of town where people with money would have lived in the 17th and 18th century, especially while the Protestants were still here. So this street here is called La Rue du Temple, the temple, because it takes you to the temple that's at the very end. But if you come to Saumur in the next few months, I just want you to know it's wrapped in scaffoldings right now. So it wouldn't be easy to see. See, Rue du Temple. And then look, my friends, we have a street filled with old hôtels particuliers, private mansions. The one in front of us is from the 16th century. Look at this tower. This little tourelle on the side. And there are many more along this street. And I'm going to walk you past one of the major ones. It belonged to a professor of that Protestant university that was so well known around Europe. He taught Hebrew at the university, and he owned that private mansion. That's right, I did greet the cat in French. Look, this is only a fraction of what we could see inside the courtyard. There's probably a little garden. And look at the tree. It's a mimosa, French mimosa. It's from the acacia family. So imagine, this guy was a professor at the Protestant school when it was still going, and he was in fact the principal of that school, I believe, for a while as well. Now the bad news for the Protestants is that Henry III was eventually assassinated, and it was his cousin who took over and started a whole new dynasty of kings, the Bourbon dynasty. His name was Henry IV. He was the king of France and the Navarre, and he was a Protestant king. But Henry was also assassinated in the early 17th century. That was really bad news for the Protestants here in Saumur and in many other towns. And when that happened, I'm going to step back so you can see it a little better. Look at that tower over there. When that happened, things got sour for Protestants in Saumur and other places. Henry IV had a grandson. We know him as Louis XIV, the Sun King. Louis XIV actually made it pretty clear he was not in favor of religious tolerance. And at that point in time, in the 17th century, a lot of Protestants left France, left Saumur, left Tours, and it was a big blow to those cities because those Protestants were typically very successful. They were businessmen, they were lawyers, and they held the power, the economic power of those cities in their hands. And when they left, the cities, of course, suffered. I mean, you can imagine the wealth of this gentleman to have such a pretty home. Interesting windows here. I'm trying to give you an overview of the history of Saumur. It's very interesting. A lot happened here. But it's unique. The fact that it was a Protestant stronghold is very unique. Now, we saw the mailbox of the Compagnon. Look at this mailbox. How do you think the mailman puts the mail in there with that big thing standing in the middle? I guess packages get delivered somewhere else entirely, don't you think? We have interesting mailboxes in Saumur. So I'm walking through very peaceful streets. It's almost 6 o'clock on Saturday. There was a rugby game earlier between France and Ireland, and on the main square where I'm going to wrap up this walk in a little while, people were watching the game on a giant TV, and they were sitting outside on terrace, which was quite lively. And this morning the market was also lively. But now it's back to being what I suspect Saumur is a lot of the time, especially off season, which is a sleepy town. Very peaceful, very mellow. I love how the comments on YouTube roll in way later after so it's like I have to figure out why people are saying what they're saying, because it takes a while. Just going to turn here to show you one of the landmarks in town. It's called the King's House, what's left of it, another 15th century mansion, and it's called the King's House because several kings have stayed here. Charles VII, you may know Charles VII is that king who got a lot of help to beat the English from a young woman named Joan of Arc. And then we had other kings as well stay here. Henry IV, the good King Henry, and his wife, Mary de Medici, and a young Louis XIV who had fled Paris when he was very, very young, something he never forgot because the noblemen rebelled. So this is the King's House, and I'm sorry we have to look at it through a gate. But it is one of the landmarks in this corner of town. I am now heading, so the chateau towers over us, and there would have been walls, different generations of walls to protect the town. But here we are about to enter a street called La Rue du Marché, the Market Street. And in fact, this building across from us, this rather modern building, is the covered food market. The covered food market is inside. But it's clear that there were a lot of food stores, and I'm trying to wait for, well, for such a quiet town, there's a lot of traffic right now. Okay, here we go. So Rue du Marché, very quiet now, but this morning we had stalls, food stalls lining it. I took some photos and I'll be sharing that later. Yeah, that's not uncommon, the modern facades in the middle of those historic city centers. If you come to my city to tour, you will see that we do have this mix of historic facades and newer buildings. One of the reasons could be that Tours and Saumur suffered greatly during World War II, not only from the Germans in 1940, June of 1940 at the start of the occupation, but also from Allied bombings in 1944. So we lost a lot of the buildings, Tours in particular. So this is Les Halles Saint-Pierre, and this is the covered food market. It's completely dead right now. Nothing's happening there. There's a brocante on the right-hand side. This gentleman has some interesting things, fun things. I looked at them earlier. Bonjour. Vous voulez dire bonjour? Des Américains. Beaucoup d'Américains et d'étrangers qui ne peuvent pas venir pour l'instant et qui sont ravis de découvrir Saumur. Voilà. Bonne journée. Merci. Je montre votre magasin. Hein. C'est sur YouTube, monsieur. YouTube. Oui, YouTube. Bonne journée. Au revoir. Charming gentleman. People don't like being filmed, so you have to always be careful. Here we are in a neighborhood known as Saint-Jean, Saint John, and Saint-Jean traditionally is a place with a lot of shopping and stores. We have a street musician here, but earlier, see there's a street over there and you have a lot of boutiques and the side streets as well. Here's your charcutier and your boucher. The chicken is gone for the day. The dogs are walking. It's this time of day. Here's a really cute cheese shop, La Fromagerie du Puy Neuf, the fromagerie of the new well. And I wanted to show you the window, but some people are standing right outside. So let's see. I'm going to wait a second and see if they move on, because the window is only goat cheese, and you know that's a specialty in the Touraine and in the Anjou, and it's a lovely window. And this takes us to one of the many smaller squares. Bonjour. Look at that. This is only goat cheese. And then it keeps going, it keeps going. It's a lovely shop. And on this candelabra here, you have piled up goat cheese, which I thought was a really nice touch. So if you come to Saumur, this is where you could buy some delicious cheese. The light is lovely right now. Sun is setting. So Saint-Jean, quite a busy neighborhood when everybody's out and about like they were today shopping. And this morning the merchants were out here. Beautiful produce. Look at this cute little square. I really like this square here. You have your librairie, your bookstore on the right-hand side. It's a nice one, good size one, and an independent store, clearly. Tomate cerise, tomato cherry, is where I had a really nice lunch. It's like a quick lunch. And I had a really nice slice of homemade quiche with vegetables and a side salad that had delicious dressing and a coffee. And I think it was under €7. So this is a great place for you if you want a quick lunch in Saumur. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? Look at the sun playing off that facade. So lovely. It's an old fountain in the middle. The store behind the fountain is called L'Angle des Délices. Délices, what's delicious, and they sell a lot of local specialties. And in Saumur, you have people come here for the wine, of course, but they also come for food specialties, cookies, all sorts of things. There is a distillery in town that's really well known. It's been here since the 19th century, and they make the triple sec. You know, they're the ones who invented the triple sec, that alcohol that you use in so many cocktails. You can visit the distillery, and it's very interesting. The architecture, the industrial architecture, dates back to the 19th century. I highly recommend visiting that. I did shop there after the tour, and that was a lot of fun. So, here is La Place Saint-Pierre. It is the main square in town. From what I can see, this is the square where people meet. And it is named after this beautiful church. Remember, we saw the steeple from up there from the chateau. It was built originally in the 12th and 13th century. The facade was updated much, much later. But it is a pretty church. And you can see it's surrounded by more beautiful facades. It's pretty different from my favorite square in Tours, from La Place Plumereau, because we have so many half-timbered homes in Tours. Here they have more of the tufa facades, 17th, 18th century, but you do have the occasional half-timbered home, like here, right above this auberge, this restaurant. And there are a couple more on the other side I'll take you to see. I will be sharing, I think I've already shared, in fact, information about this restaurant, Bistro Les Tontons. It's under new ownership with a new chef, and I had a delicious meal there yesterday. So if you come to Tours, you have options on this square, but this is one I would definitely recommend. Delicious food, very nicely presented, not your average boring-looking bistro food. Glad you're enjoying the tour. So it's looking so quiet now. And just a few hours ago, where I'm standing exactly here, all the food merchants were here. And it's a small market, but it's a very lively one. There were lots of people pulling their little, caddy shopping carts. I'll be wrapping up in a few minutes. But first, I want to show you our two half-timbered homes here, 15th through 16th century. Very nice, in pretty good shape. Now, they did some interesting things with the facades. You can see this one is filled with tufa stone between the wood frames, while this one is doing some creative things with brick. Now, the joke on these houses, and I'll share photos so you can see that better, is that these little guys you see here, I'm not going to zoom, these little guys are actually playing with their, should we say, their nether regions, which is pretty oh la la for the Middle Ages, isn't it? So I thought that was a nice touch. Oops, pun intended. Glad you like it, June, glad you like it. All right, so let me switch things around so you can see my face at least once here. Bonjour les amis. I want to thank you for taking this tour with me. Much more to see in Saumur. We could take a walk by the Loire River, where that brought so much prosperity to this town. But we did see the chateau, and I wanted to show you where the chateau area was, the house by the Compagnons du Devoir et du Tour de France. We did see a couple nice streets with the 17th, 18th century homes, hôtel particulier. And here we are on Place Saint-Pierre. I'm going to turn around so you can see it behind me. And it seems quiet now, but it was really lively earlier today. And one of the many ways to go up to the chateau is to go through the street. I'm going to turn around so you can see it. Like so. Voila. So if you follow the street past those two half-timbered homes, voila, you would actually go up to the chateau. And it's a really nice way to go there because there are more pretty buildings on the sides. So if you've enjoyed this tour, donations are always gratefully accepted to cover the cost, the time, and the resources that it takes to run these tours, especially when I travel and I stay in a hotel. So any donations are gratefully accepted. I have a virtual tip jar on PayPal. You can do the SuperChats on YouTube as well. All that information will be in the video notes. The best way to support France with Véro, my online business, especially if you enjoy what I publish weekly and monthly on social media, all the photo essays, the stories, and the videos, is to join us on Patreon, patreon.com/France with Véro. I have a community of about 500 well-traveled Francophiles and Francophones who communicate and exchange in live events each month and in a private Facebook group. we have a lot of fun, so consider joining us. That would be really great for you and for me, in fact, to be honest. I'm going to switch around to show you the square one last time. If it will switch around, sometimes it doesn't. Here we go. And I will finish, I think, facing l'église Saint-Pierre. You don't see the steeple from here quite so well. You're going to see it in a second as I get close here. Do you see it on the right-hand side here? The steeple has a very interesting shape, and that's not unusual in this part of the Loire Valley. In the Maine-et-Loire, which is the name of the administrative division that Saumur is in, sometimes they even have twisted shapes. So this is quite typical of the Anjou, and this section of the Anjou in particular. So if you'd like to come to Saumur, any time is a good time. I suspect it's very, very busy in the summer, and it's a very small town. I am staying in a lovely hotel that I'll be sharing because I am so impressed with that hotel. So I'll be sharing that information. I filmed a video as well. So you'll have a place to stay. I've shown you a couple of good places to eat, like Bistrot des Tontons there on the right-hand side. And I hope you consider coming to Saumur or returning to Saumur. There's so much to do around here. The Abbey of Fontevraud, where Eleanor of Aquitaine and her husband are buried, as well as their son, Richard the Lionheart. You can sample some wine, visit that distillery I told you about. Lots and lots and lots to do. All right, friends, enjoy the rest of your weekend. My adventures continue tomorrow with a road trip. I'm going to make another stop on the way back to Tours tomorrow. It's endless. There's too much to do around here. Thank you for joining me today. À bientôt.